He'd been working the south fence since sunrise. William Cordell, 41, alone 5 winters now, leaned into the wind as he looped the last bit of wire around a rotted cedar post. The sun was out, but held no warmth. His palms were cracked, his knuckles raw. Every so often he'd pause to roll his shoulders and scan the field for coyote prints. The wind whispered through the dead grass like it carried voices. It always did that out here. Sometimes, if he was tired enough, he thought he heard her, Anna, calling the boys in for supper. But there was no one calling anymore. Just the sound of his breath and the creak of worn leather gloves. This part of Wyoming didn't forgive, didn't comfort. It just let time pass while men like him tried to hold together what little they had left. He kept the land running out of habit now, out of duty to the bones buried out back and the 2 boys growing up without a mother. James was 12, quiet and watchful like William had been at that age. Josiah was 8, still asking too many questions for a father who didn't have the answers. It had been a dry spring. The river ran low and the cattle weren't gaining like they should. William didn't complain, not aloud, not to anyone. Most of the men around here carried their burdens in silence. Some drank them down, others worked until their backs gave out. William just kept fixing fences. He was setting his boot on the wire to tighten it when he heard the gallop. Fast, desperate. His head snapped up, heart kicking hard. A woman on horseback. Long skirts dark with mud, her face streaked with tears and dust. She wasn't riding for show. She was riding like something was chasing her. She didn't slow as she reached the edge of his pasture, just threw herself off the saddle before the mare had fully stopped. Her knees hit the earth, and she raised her arms like she was praying to the sky, her breath ragged. "Please," she choked out, "don't let them take my babies." William didn't move for a second, just stared. Her voice had hit something in him, deep buried. He dropped the fencing tool, boots thudding as he crossed the dirt. "Ma'am," he said, low and careful. She looked up, eyes wild, rimmed with panic. "They said I'm not fit, that I'm unstable, but I swear I never hurt them. I had no one, no money, no husband. They don't listen when you don't have a man next to you." He knelt beside her, slow, like she might bolt. Her hand was shaking. She looked 30 or so, maybe younger if she'd ever had a chance to rest. Her dress was torn near the hem, and her boots had no laces. She had one glove. The other hand was bleeding. William didn't know what to say. The land taught you to hold your tongue until you understood the storm. So he waited. "My name's Laura," she said, clutching her ribs. "My girls, Rose and Mabel, they're 5 and 2. They're in a wagon by the creek bend. I had a ride ahead. I thought maybe if I could reach someone." "Who's trying to take them?" "Sheriff's deputy," she whispered. "And a woman from the county. Said someone reported I left them alone. I didn't. I just walked to town for bread, and they were asleep. The neighbor saw and said I was gone too long." William looked to the east. He could see a trail of dust rising in the distance. Someone was coming, all right. Maybe 2 riders. He stood slowly, jaw clenched. "Are they hurt?" he asked. "No," she said quickly. "Just scared. They think they're in trouble." He didn't ask if it was true what the officials had said. Didn't ask what she did for work or how she came to be on the run. He looked at her face. It had the kind of desperation no liar could fake. "Come on," he said, offering his hand. "We'll go get your girls." She didn't thank him, just nodded like she couldn't quite believe he'd said it. By the time they reached the wagon, the girls were crying softly. Mabel had a filthy rag doll grip to her chest, and Rose was sitting with her knees drawn tight, chewing the edge of her sleeve. They looked up at their mother with hope and fear knotted in their little faces. The wagon was falling apart. One of the wheels had been tied with rope. There was no food, just an empty tin and a canteen. William squatted beside them. "You girls want to come with me for a while? My ranch is just a bit west. Got wood stove and some honey bread from yesterday." Rose looked to her mother, then back at William. "Will Mama come too?" "She will," he said, nodding. That was all they needed. They climbed down, Mabel stumbling on her skirt. William helped Laura onto the mare again, then took the girls up front with him. The ride back was slow. He could feel the pressure building behind him. The law wouldn't be far off. But he wasn't worried. Not yet. He knew Sheriff Harlan. The man wasn't evil, just tired and by the book. But he'd never looked into a woman's eyes the way William just hadn't seen someone about a break. The cabin was quiet when they arrived. His boys weren't back from checking traps. Good. That gave him time. He let the girls inside first. They stood in the doorway like they weren't sure it was real, like they expected someone to yell at them. William pointed to the hearth. Sit. Warm up. I'll get water. Laura lingered near the door, her fingers twisting the hem of her sleeve. I won't stay, she said. Just enough to rest them. You don't need trouble. I got plenty of that already, William muttered. One more won't make the difference. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that comes from someone not used to hearing kindness anymore. An hour passed. The girls fell asleep on a quilt, bellies full. Laura sat in the rocking chair, eyes heavy but still watchful. William poured coffee and stared out the window, waiting for the dust cloud to reach his gate. He didn't have to wait long. Hoofbeats, then the slam of boots on his porch. The deputy was young, too eager. The woman from the county was older, wearing spectacles and a long wool coat. Her face was tight with judgment. We're looking for a Laura Townsend, the deputy said. She's suspected of child endangerment. William stepped onto the porch. She's inside. The girls are asleep. They're safe. You're harboring her? The woman asked. I'm giving her a place to rest. You can come in and see for yourself. They hesitated, not expecting his calm. Inside, the woman moved to the quilt, knelt down. Looked at the girls. They look unharmed, she admitted. I'd say better than that, William said. They're warm. They're fed. Laura didn't speak. She stood near the window, arms around herself, trembling. She needs help, William said, but not the kind that tears her away from her babies. You want to file a report, fine. I'll sign whatever you need. But this ain't justice. It's just cruelty wrapped up in law. The deputy shifted his weight. We can't ignore a call. No one's asking you to. Just use your eyes. That woman carried 2 babies across 3 counties trying to protect them. She's not a danger. She's what's left of love. The woman from the county sighed. We'll need to talk with her privately. Evaluate the situation. You can do that, William said, but not tonight. She looked at him a long moment, then nodded. They left without cuffs. Just a warning. Said they'd return with forms. Laura didn't cry. Just sat down again once the door closed and stared at the floor. You didn't have to do that, she said. I know. They'll be back. I know. The fire crackled softly. The wind picked up outside. William poured 2 more cups of coffee and handed her one. You got anywhere else to go? No. Then you're staying here. At least for now. She looked up slowly. Her face softened just a little. And for the first time in years, William felt something shift. Not hope. Not yet. But maybe something close. William never told anyone, but some nights he stayed out in the barn longer than he needed to, just so he wouldn't have to walk back into that quiet house. The kitchen where Anna used to hum, where the smell of fresh cornbread used to carry through the walls. It was all still there, just dulled, like sunlight through dusty glass. After she died, folks came with casseroles and whispered kindnesses, but grief never ate casseroles. It just sat heavy in his chest, silent year after year. The boys filled the silence a little. James was too old too fast, already carrying himself like a man, already watching his little brother like it was his job. Josiah still asked him if God took Mama, because they didn't pray hard enough. William had never been good with words, but he tried. Said sometimes things just happen, even when you do everything right. And now Laura was asleep in the spare room, her girls curled beside her, like maybe they'd never known any other bed. The house had been quiet for so long, he forgot how loud breathing and soft footsteps could feel. The rhythm of a home, not just a shelter, something more. The next morning, William fried eggs and set a bowl of jam on the table. He wasn't much of a cook, but it would do. When James and Josiah returned from their early trap checks, the sight of 2 strange girls sitting in their kitchen gave them both pause. Josiah blinked. James just looked at William. These are Rose and Mabel, William said. "They'll be staying a little while." Josiah stepped forward first, tilting his head at the younger girl's doll. "What's her name?" Mabel clutched the doll tighter. "Just Baby." "That's a good name," he nodded, then sat cross-legged on the floor beside her like it was the most natural thing in the world. Laura came in slow, wearing one of Anna's old shawls, still drowsy but alert. William cleared his throat. "Laura, this is James. That's Josiah. They help with the place." She gave a soft nod, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Sorry if we're trouble," she said. James glanced at his father again, quiet. William gave a small shake of his head. No one was going to press her right now. It didn't take long for the house to fall into a new rhythm. Laura offered to do laundry, then baking, then feeding the hens. She didn't sit still for long. William knew that kind of movement. It was how people try to make themselves useful, so no one would ask them to leave. And her girls, tired, jumpy, slow to laugh at first, began to settle. They followed Josiah like he was their big brother. He showed them how to find smooth stones and taught Mabel how to blow into a blade of grass. William caught himself watching all of it from the porch some days, his heart beating in an odd, unfamiliar way. Not worry, not duty, something else. Laura never spoke much about her past, but little pieces slipped out in the quiet. One evening, while folding clothes, she said, "I'm married too young. Thought I knew what I was doing." William didn't ask questions, just listened. He was gone more than home, then gone for good. No papers, no real goodbye. She didn't look up from sheets. I went to his brother for help, just until I could get on my feet. He said I wasn't his problem. After that, I stopped asking. William looked out at the land. It went on forever, and sometimes still it wasn't enough to outrun what followed people. "You ever get tired of carrying all that?" he asked. She gave a breath of a laugh. "You put it down, it just finds a way back into your hands." The kids were asleep by then. The house was quiet again, but in a different way. Not empty, just resting. Days passed. The woman from the county returned with a second man, someone from Cheyenne. They said they needed to conduct an official welfare check. William let them in. He stood tall, but didn't raise his voice. Laura answered every question, her hands clasped in her lap. "She's making progress," the woman admitted. "This is a stable home, but it isn't hers." "It is now," William said. "She stays here as long as she needs to." They wrote things down, measured words like wait, left with promises to revisit. That night, William sat on the porch with James. The boy had been quiet all evening. "You like having them here?" William asked. James shrugged. "Don't mind. They're small. Don't take up much." "That ain't what I meant." James looked at his father's face, then down at the cup in his hands. "Feels like Mama's still here." "A little." William didn't answer. He just looked out at the pasture, heart aching in the way only a widower's can, when the world give you a taste of something you thought you'd never feel again. One afternoon, a man rode up a trail. William saw him from the barn and stepped out, brushing dust from his sleeves. The rider was lean, scar on his neck, boots too polished for a real ranch hand. He didn't dismount. "You William Cordell?" "I am. I'm here about Laura Townsend." William didn't move. "I represent a claim from her late husband's cousin," the man continued. "Name's Frank Hill. Says she took property, namely, the wagon, and left town against agreed custody. She said she was never given custody papers. Don't need papers if the town sides with you." The man smirked. "Frank's got folks backing him." "I don't give a damn who he's got," William said. "He puts a foot on my land, I'll show him what Wyoming law feels like." The man didn't flinch, just tipped his hat and turned the horse. "He'll come himself next time." William didn't reply. He didn't need to. That evening, he told Laura about the visit. She paled, sat down hard. "Frank never wanted the girls. He just said if I ran, he'd make sure I lost everything. Said the only reason I stayed alive was because I kept my mouth shut." William clenched his jaw. "You safe here. He's got money, lawyers, friends." "So do I," William said, then paused. "Well, not the lawyers, but I've got friends." Laura looked at him for a long time. "Why are you doing this?" Because no one did it for Anna when she needed it. Because I know what it's like to lose everything. Her eyes welled, but she didn't let the tears fall. Thank you, she whispered. They stood in silence until Josiah came barreling in with a scraped knee and Rose close behind. That night, when the moon was high, William found himself outside her door, just listening. The quiet comforted him now, a new kind, one with soft breathing on the other side. He didn't knock, didn't want to break the moment, just stood there with his hand resting against the frame. He wasn't sure what was ahead, but something had changed. The wind still howled across the land. The fences still sagged under weight. But inside, something was mending, and he wasn't going to let anyone tear it apart. The summer deepened, and with it, so did the patterns of a new kind of life in William's home. It wasn't dramatic, not like in stories. It was quiet, dresses drying on the line, children's laughter echoing against the barn walls, and two worn hands finding comfort in simple work shared between strangers who no longer felt like strangers. The morning started earlier now. Laura liked to take the girls out to the vegetable patch before the heat settled in, and William would hear their soft chatter from the field. Mabel's tiny voice rose like a bird when she found a beetle, and Rose, sharp-eyed and serious, already mimicked her mother's tone when she scolded her sister. They were beginning to belong, even if no one said it aloud. One morning, William came in from the south pasture to find the kitchen full of warm air and the smell of peach bread. Laura had her sleeves rolled to her elbows, a smudge of flour on her cheek, and a laugh on her lips. The laugh stopped when she saw him watching her. "Hope you don't mind." The peaches were soft. Figured it was a shame to waste them. "I don't mind," William said. He wanted to say more. He wanted to say that seeing her like that, alive, at ease, felt like something he didn't deserve to witness. But he didn't know how to say it without sounding like a fool. The kids sat at the table, crumbs on their faces, giggling about something William missed. James gave a faint smile when William walked by and set his tools down by the door. "Smells good in here," William added. "Better than salt pork and biscuits," she teased. He smirked, didn't say all that. She met his eyes and didn't look away. Those little moments happened more and more. A brush of her hand when passing plates. A shared glance when one of the kids said something that reminded them how fast time slips by. There was a gentleness growing, slow like moss. William started finding reasons to linger by the porch when she was out feeding chickens, and Laura took to standing by the gate when he rode back in from the far fields. They didn't name it. They didn't rush it. But it was there. Then came a letter. No return address, just his name scrawled rough across the front. Inside, a single piece of paper with crooked handwriting. "I know where she is. I'll come when I'm ready. I want what's mine." No signature, no date. But William knew. Frank Hill. He burned the letter in the stove before the children could see it. But the smoke that rose stayed with him all evening. He didn't tell Laura. Not yet. He told himself it was to protect her. But the truth was darker. He didn't want to see the fear return her face. Didn't want the girls to wake up to packed bags and goodbye tears. But fear has a way of finding its way through the smallest cracks. That night, as the kids slept, Laura sat on the porch steps, arms hugging her knees. William stepped out, leaned against the post. The moon cast her face in silver. She looked like a woman trying not to cry. "Something's coming," she said softly. He didn't answer. He knew better than to pretend. "I used to have nightmares," she whispered. "Back when I first ran. I'd dream of footsteps, but he'd find us in a storm. Then I'd wake up and the girls would be gone." William sat down beside her. He's got this way of looking at people like they owe him something. Even if you gave him everything, it'd never be enough. She swallowed, staring out the hills. He doesn't want the girls. He wants control. He wants to say he won. "You think he'll try to come here?" She nodded slowly. "Not with lawmen. He doesn't trust them either. He'll wait until no one's watching." William's fingers curled into his palm. He'd seen men like that. Prideful, cruel, hollow inside. The kind that used the word family as a weapon. "If he comes," William said, He won't leave with anything." She looked at him, then really looked. Her mouth parted, like she wanted to say thank you, or maybe tell him to stop making promises he couldn't keep. But no words came. Instead, she laid her head against his shoulder. "I'm so tired," she whispered, "of running, of hoping. You can stop now." A silence settled. He could feel the weight of her against him. Not heavy, not demanding, just real. After a long while, she sat back and wiped at her eyes. "I was 17 when I left home," she said. "My father said I was foolish. Mama begged me to stay, said no man would ever love me, right if I ran off. Maybe she was right." "No," William said. She wasn't. She blinked at him, surprised. "Just because someone hurt you doesn't mean you were wrong to want more," he added. "Wanting something better doesn't make you foolish." Laura gave a faint, shaking laugh. "You talk like a man who lost things too." "I did." She waited, and for the first time, he told her. "Anna died in childbirth. Our third. He didn't make it either." Laura covered her mouth. "I didn't leave the house for weeks. James took care of Josiah. Folks brought food. I didn't touch it." He looked out at the darkness. "I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad at first. I was just empty, like part of me got buried too. You don't seem empty now. I didn't think I'd get a second chance at anything, let alone this." Laura looked down. "Neither did I." They sat there until the chill settled into their skin. Then, slowly, they stood, her hand brushing his as they went inside. In the days that followed, the rhythm of life picked up. James and Rose began collecting wildflowers, pressing them between pages. Josiah and Mabel made a habit of sneaking spoonfuls of honey and blaming each other. Laura started sewing again. William built a new crib in the barn, just in case the little ones napped during chore time. Everything felt like it was moving towards something good. But always, under it, was the question, when would Frank show? It wasn't long. Late one evening, as the sky turned copper and the chickens settled into their roost, a rider crested the north ridge. William saw him from the barn loft. One rider, wide-shouldered, lean, a dark hat. William's stomach tightened. He came out slow, rifle slung low but ready. The man didn't stop at the gate, rode right up to the porch. "You Cordell?" "I am. Name's Frank." William nodded once. "I ain't here to cause a scene. Just want to see my girls. They ain't yours." Frank smiled, slow and mean. "You think I came here without cause. I think you came here hoping to scare her." Frank dismounted, stepped forward. "She ran with my brother's children. That makes them my blood. Laura says different." Frank tilted his head. "And who's she to believe now? A widow who thinks a few weeks of peace means she belongs here." William stepped down from the porch. "You got 5 seconds to turn that horse around." Frank narrowed his eyes. "You threatening me, old man? I'm giving you a choice." For a tense breath, Frank stood still. Then he turned his head toward the house. "Girls will forget her, just like I did." That's when the door opened. Laura stood in the doorway, arms trembling, but her voice was steady. "You think I'm scared of you?" Frank's jaw tightened. "I gave you everything I had. You spat on it. You beat me when I said no. You laughed when I cried. And now you want what? Redemption? Recognition?" She stepped onto the porch. "You won't get it here." The kids had gathered behind her, silent, wide-eyed. Mabel clung to James's hand. Rose stared straight at Frank with eyes far too old for her face. Frank glanced between them, then at William. The porch creaked under the weight of everything unsaid. "You've made your bed," he muttered. "Go make yours," William replied. Frank mounted his horse without another word. As he rode off, William turned back to Laura. Her knees buckled, and she sat hard on the porch step. She was shaking, but she wasn't crying. William knelt beside her. "He won't be back," he said. Laura looked at him, voice breaking. "I didn't think I could ever stand up to him." "You did." She leaned into him, and he wrapped his arms around her without hesitation. There was nothing romantic about it, just the raw need of someone who'd carried fear too long. That night, she didn't sleep in the spare room. She didn't speak of what came next, and neither did he. But in the soft darkness, Their hands found each other under the quilt. And for the first time in years, neither of them dreamed of running. The morning after Frank rode away, the house held its breath. The children played quieter than usual, like they sensed something in the air. Laura stirred biscuits with a distracted hand, glancing often toward the window, though there was no rider on the trail. William stayed near the house that day, mending a hinge that didn't need fixing and checking the same fence 3 times. The world didn't change after a man like Frank left. It just waited to see what kind of damage he'd do next. The storm didn't come with thundering hooves or gunfire. It arrived 2 days later, tucked into a brown envelope, handed over by a courier who didn't meet William's eyes. It was from a judge in Cheyenne. Temporary custody, hearing notice. William read it 3 times, then dropped into a chair like his legs had gone out. The court date was set for 5 days out. Frank had filed a petition. He wanted Rose and Mabel removed from Laura's care. Said she was unfit, unstable, and transient. He used words like vagrant and mental instability. Said she had no permanent address, no documented income, no formal guardianship. William's name wasn't mentioned at all. When he told Laura, her mouth went dry before she could speak. "I knew he'd find a way," she said softly. "I knew peace like this doesn't last for people like me." William knelt by her chair. "We can fight it." She shook her head. "He's got papers, lawyers. All I have are stories nobody wants to believe. You have me. That's not enough," she whispered. William wanted to argue, but the truth of it stung too deeply. On paper, she was a woman drifting from county to county, living out of a broken wagon, raising 2 kids alone with no job and no support. That's what the courts would see, not the warmth she'd brought back into this home, not the way the girls laughed again, or how Mabel finally slept through the night. The system didn't care about healing. It cared about records and stamps and names. That night, William sat outside, long after everyone else had gone to bed. He drank coffee gone cold and watched the stars blink over the ridge. He'd buried a wife under those stars. He wouldn't bury a family now. The next day, he hitched the wagon and drove to town. He hadn't asked for help in years, but there were still a few folks who remembered who he was before grief swallowed him. He stopped first at Doc Mason's. The old man still had Anna's picture hanging above his desk. "I need a character letter," William said without preamble. "For Laura, and for the girls." Doc Mason scratched his head. "I only met her once. But you've seen the children. You know they're cared for. Safe." The doctor nodded. "You think this is going to be enough?" "I don't know," William said. "But I'd rather lose trying than stand by watching." He left with a signed statement and a quiet wish of luck. Next was the church. Then the schoolhouse, where the teacher said she'd seen Rose and Mabel when Laura brought them by, asking about books and learning games. Slowly, piece by piece, William gathered fragments of a defense. It wasn't law, but it was truth. When he returned home, Laura was packing. Quietly, deliberately, folding the girls' clothes, placing them into small satchels. Her back was stiff, her movements mechanical. "What are you doing?" he asked. She didn't stop folding. "I'm going to hand them over." William stepped forward, heart hammering. "The hell you are. If I fight and lose, he'll punish them. He'll make it hard for them forever. If I go quietly, maybe he'll let them grow up without knowing what it feels like to be hunted. You think he's going to protect them?" William barked. She turned on him, eyes flashing with something like rage or terror. "No, I don't. But I don't have a way to stop him. I don't have your name, or your land, or a reputation that folks respect. I'm just a girl who made bad choices and now has to live with them." She sank to the floor, trembling. "I thought maybe this place could be the one that lasted. But nothing ever stays." William sat beside her, slow, unsure. "You're not alone this time." She wiped her eyes, furious at herself. "I am when it matters. That courtroom, when they read those lies, no one's going to care what I've survived. They're just going to see a mother who ran." William swallowed, the words forming slowly in his mouth. "Then marry me." She looked up, shock silent. He didn't repeat it. "I'm not asking for anything more than that," he said. "Just a name, a roof." A chance. Let them see what's really true, that you and those girls belong here. Laura shook her head. You can't fix this for me. I'm not trying to fix it. I'm trying to stand beside you while you face it. Her eyes searched his face, stunned by the quiet steadiness in his voice. You do that, she whispered. For me, for them, he said. And yes, for you. They married the next day. No dress, no rings, just a simple signature at the church with the preacher mumbling through a prayer and the kids watching wide-eyed. Laura held Mabel in one arm, and William held James's shoulder tight, the boys looking proud and a little confused. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't soft. It was survival wrapped in promise. When the court day came, they packed early and rode out before sunrise. The children stayed with Miss Lottie, a widow friend of William's who agreed to keep them safe for the day. Laura didn't speak on the drive, just held William's hand in hers like it was the only thing keeping her together. The courtroom was small, polished wood benches, dust motes in the air. Frank sat at a table with two lawyers in tailored coats, calm as a preacher. He didn't look at Laura when she walked in, didn't even smirk. That's what scared William the most. The judge was gray-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind who'd heard every lie 1,000 times over. He flipped through the folder, then looked at Laura. You've lived in 7 counties in 4 years. Yes, sir. You've had no formal employment. I worked as I could, cleaning, cooking, mending. But I wasn't paid on paper. And your current residence? With my husband, William Cordell. I married him 4 days ago. Frank's lawyer stood. Your Honor, the timing of that marriage is highly suspect. She married to protect those children, William said. And I offer because I've seen what she's done for them. The judge held up a hand. Mr. Cordell, you'll speak when called. William nodded, sat down. The next hour crawled. Frank's lawyers painted a picture of recklessness. They showed the judge the old wagon, photos of her sleeping outside buildings, a statement from a former landlord who claimed she broke lease. They called her unstable, unreliable. Laura stood when asked, voice shaking but clear. I never abandoned my girls, she said. Not once. We were poor, and we were scared, but we stayed together. I gave them everything I had, and when I had nothing left, I walked miles just to find help. She glanced toward William, and I found it. In him, in his home, in the safety they have now. William handed over the letters, one by one, signed by the doctor, the teacher, the preacher. The judge read them slowly. Frank never looked up. Then, finally, the judge sighed. You've made your case, both sides. But I don't rule on stories. I rule on what's in front of me. He leaned forward, and what I see is a mother who's struggled, but who is not abandoned, who's made mistakes, but not crimes, who's asked for help and received it with dignity. I won't remove those children from her care. Laura's knees nearly gave, but the judge added, I am assigning a social worker to conduct monthly visits. Your stability is still young. One wrong move, and custody can shift. Laura nodded through tears. Yes, sir. Outside the courthouse, Frank followed them. You think this is over? He said. You got lucky in there. One slip and I'll be back. William stepped forward. You come near them again, you'll leave with more than a court loss. Frank laughed, mean and low, but he walked away. Back at home, the wind that night was soft. The house felt warmer somehow. Mabel fell asleep on William's lap. Rose curled beside her mama. You saved us, Laura whispered. William shook his head. No, we all just stopped running. She looked at him, really looked this time. Her hand reached for his cheek, trembling. I don't want this to be just survival anymore. He brushed her hair back. Then let's build something real. She kissed him, tentative, soft, like she wasn't sure it would hold. But it did. The days that followed the court ruling were quieter, but the kind of quiet that never truly settles. William noticed it in the way Laura double-checked the windows before dusk, how she paused every time a horse passed on the road, even if it was just a neighbor hauling hay. She kept her shoulders tense like something was still unfinished, like Frank had carved a fear so deep into her, not even the judge's gavel could silence it. William didn't push her. He fixed what was broken, brought in firewood, taught Josiah how to tie a stronger knot, and let Mabel ride the old mule around the paddock while Rose read out loud on the porch. Laura cooked, swept, mended shirts no one asked her to fix, and watched the ridge like a woman waiting for bad news. Her body was here, but her spirit stayed somewhere on guard. One evening, William brought her coffee and sat beside her near the garden. The kids were still chasing fireflies, giggling behind the barn. "You're not sleeping much," he said quietly. She wrapped her hand around the cup. "Not since before the hearing. Frank's gone." "He's never really gone," she whispered. William nodded, eyes heavy with knowing. "Want to tell me what he did?" Laura was quiet for a long time. Then, without looking at him, she spoke. "He never hit the girls. Never touched them. Not like that. But he used them. Control me with them. If I said the wrong thing, he'd lock me out at night. Left me barefoot once in the snow. Made Rose watch through the window while I begged to be let back in." William didn't move. He called me stupid every day. Said no one would ever want me. Said if I ran, he'd make sure I'd never see my kids again. He made sure I believed it. Tears dripped silently from her cheeks, landing on her skirt like drops of ink. "The worst part," she said, her voice cracking, "was that I believed him. For years. I stayed because I didn't think I was worth saving." William reached for her hand. She let him. "You walked out. That's what matters. I waited too long. You didn't." Laura looked at him now, her face raw with truth. "You think I'm strong, William, but I'm just surviving. I'm still scared every day. Every knock on the door, every letter in the post. I'm still that girl waiting to be told I've done something wrong." He leaned forward, brow resting lightly against hers. "You're not that girl anymore. You're the woman who stood up in court and fought back. You're the one who stood on my porch and said, 'Don't let them take my babies.' And you're still here. That's strength." She broke then, not with sobs, but with silence, the kind that shudders through the whole body. He wrapped his arms around her, held her as she clung to him like a lifeline. And when she finally looked up, something in her eyes had changed. The weight was still there, but the helplessness had cracked. "I want to be their mother," she whispered. "Not their shadow." "Then be her," William said. "Start now." That night, she sat between her daughters and read to them from one of the old books they'd found in the attic. Her voice wobbled at first, but by the second chapter, it was strong again. The girls leaned against her like she was the safest place on earth. Maybe for the first time, she believed that too. But healing never arrives without testing. The very next morning, a letter came addressed not to William, not to Laura, but to Mrs. Cordell. It was from Frank's lawyer. Another challenge. This time, not about the children, but about property. Frank was demanding compensation for the wagon, and for personal effects Laura had taken. Tools, clothing, bedding, all things she said were hers. "He's trying to bleed me," she said, holding the paper and shaking hands. "He can't win," William said. "He doesn't care about winning. He just wants to keep me crawling." William took the letter, folded it cleanly, and burned it in the stove like the last one. But the fight wasn't over. Later that day, while William was in the east pasture with James, Laura heard hoofbeats again. She stepped onto the porch, heart thudding. It wasn't Frank. It was Frank's brother, Jed. He looked older than she remembered, less cruel, more tired. "I don't want trouble," he said, staying a few paces from the porch. "I just came to talk." Laura didn't move. "Talk about what?" "He's not going to stop. He doesn't care how many times the law says no. He'll find another way. And I ain't defending him. I'm just telling you what he's planning." She crossed her arms. "And why are you telling me now?" Jed looked down at the ground, scraped his boot in the dirt. "Because I've got daughters too. And I never said a word when he hurt you. I just watched. I've had to live with that. Silence. He wants to make your life so hard you give up. Wants to keep you small." Laura stepped off the porch. "Well, I'm not small anymore." Jed looked up, met her eyes, and for a second, he seemed ashamed. "I could talk to some folks. Tell them what I saw. What I should have said before. Might help if he files again." She studied him for a long moment, then gave a single nod. "Then talk." William returned later to find her on the porch alone, looking spent but lighter. "What happened?" he asked. She told him, every word, and for the first time, she didn't look afraid. Just tired but clear-eyed. "You think he's telling the truth?" William asked. "Doesn't matter," she said. "I told mine." That night, William and Laura sat under the stars again, but it felt different. The air wasn't heavy. The silence between them was not made of fear, but peace. "I've never loved anyone the way I love those girls," she said softly. "I know." She looked at him. "And I think I'm starting to love you too. But it scares me." He smiled gently. "That's how you know it's real." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I want to build a life. A good one. Not just a hiding place." "Then let's build it," he said. Together. They didn't speak of Frank again that night, or courtrooms, or lawyers, or the past. Just tomorrow. And that was the beginning of everything new. The first frost settled soft on the fields that autumn, quiet and silver. William rose early as always, but when he stepped out, he saw Laura already on the porch, wrapped in his old coat, watching the sunrise like it was something she'd earned. Behind her, little Mabel's laugh came through the kitchen window. Laura turned, met his eyes, and smiled. Not with the nervous twitch of someone waiting for the next storm, but with the calm of a woman who knew she was home. A month had passed since Jed's visit. Frank hadn't shown his face again. Maybe the court had worn him down. Maybe Jed's testimony scared him off. Maybe he finally saw what William had always known. Laura wasn't his to break anymore. The girls called William Papa now, quietly, without fanfare. It happened in the middle of supper one night. Mabel handed him her cup and said, "More milk, please, Papa," just like it had always been his name. Laura's fork froze halfway to her mouth. William's hand trembled as he poured, but he didn't say a word. Just set it back in front of her, heart full and aching. Rose said it a few days later, not looking at him when she did. But he heard it, clear as day, and he never forgot the sound. James and Josiah had changed too. Josiah now ran to Laura when he scraped a knee. James took to helping her in the garden, carrying heavy baskets even when he didn't have to. They didn't talk about it. They just acted like they'd always been hers. One day in late October, William found the old family trunk from the attic, and his sewing things, baby quilts, a carved wooden horse Josiah used to chew on when he was teething. He brought it down, dusted it off, and left it open in the parlor. Later that night, he caught Laura kneeling over it, tears in her eyes as she ran her fingers along the worn fabric. "I never thought someone would share something like this with me," she said. "You're part of this now." She looked up. "Am I?" He nodded, stepped forward, and took her hand. "You're not filling someone else's place, Laura. You've made your own." She touched the quilt gently, then folded it over her arm. "Then let's make new ones too." That winter, the house was fuller than it had ever been. Not just with people, but with sound, with warmth. Laura taught the girls to knead dough while William carved Mabel a cradle for her doll. Snow blew hard across the ridge, but inside, there was laughter, music from an old fiddle Josiah found, and the smell of cinnamon drying on strings by the fire. They still had hard days. The girls still woke with nightmares sometimes. Laura still checked the door locks more than she needed to. William still talked to Anna when the nights were long, asking her silently if she would have welcomed all this. He believed she would have. She had always wanted the house to be full. On the first warm day of spring, Laura stood by the fence line where William had first seen her, dirt on her skirt, arms crossed, eyes wide with fear. Now, she wore that same look, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was awe. The land rolled out green before her. The children were picking wildflowers. Mabel had a crown of them on her head. Josiah was trying to teach her how to whistle. William came up beside her. "You remember standing here?" "I do," she said. "I remember thinking, she's lost everything." I had. He looked at her. "But not anymore." She smiled at him. "No, not anymore." She pulled something from her apron pocket. Folded parchment, aged and cracked. She handed it to him. "What's this?" "My mother's Bible page." She tore out and gave it to me when I left. I've kept it ever since. He opened it. A single verse was circled. He setteth the solitary in families. She told me that one day I'd find where I belonged, that I'd be part of something better than I ever imagined. I didn't believe her. William folded it gently, tucked it into his vest pocket. You're not alone anymore, he said. That it didn't need vows. They didn't need music. That moment, standing beside the field with the sound of their children behind them and the wind in their hair, was enough. That night, they sat on the porch together, fireflies lighting the field beyond, the sky wide and full of stars. Laura rested her head on William's shoulder. Thank you for not letting them take my babies. He didn't answer right away, just pulled her closer. They're mine too now, he said. All of you. And for the first time in years, Laura closed her eyes and slept without fear.